Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Majority Podcast number 9. My name is Mark Devlin, and I'm here with co-hosts Niall Fraser and David Griffiths. David, what have we got today?
Today we have the revelation, the quite startling revelation, that nationalists want a foreign country to pay our pensions.
Yeah. And I've got the Glasgow Cabbies highlighting the sex survey.
And I'll be talking about indoctrination in Scottish universities. In addition, we're going to have a special guest today, who is Councillor Euan Blockley. He's a Glasgow councillor. He's going to be talking about rats, rubbish, and ripping off the motorist. So, and of course, we will have Zimmer of the Week. All this coming up in a few moments. Well, hello again and good evening. As usual, we start the podcast with a shout out to our donors. We had many people contributed to funding this podcast, and your donations keep it running. If you'd like to donate to the podcast, please do so on our website. And usually we have a link underneath where it's being viewed. It's actually going out right now on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So please subscribe wherever you are, and now.
Comment, like, share. You can supercharge us. We're growing rapidly into becoming the #1 anti-SNP show on the planet. So you can supercharge us by liking, sharing, commenting. Comment twice, 3 times. Just get them in. And if you've got any questions you want to pose to our special guest this evening, Euan Blockley, please do get them in early.
Right. So without much further ado, we're going to get started on the issue of the day, which we'll hand over to David.
Indeed. Well, the issue of today is one that's been discussed many times before, but for some reason it has arisen again. The question of responsibility for state pension payments in an independent Scotland is what I'm talking about. Ian Blackford, the SNP's leader at Westminster, this week claimed in an interview with STV that the UK government, Westminster, would continue to fund state pensions for Scots pensioners in the event that Scotland ever became independent. Now, as with practically everything Blackford says on any subject these days, this, of course, is patently untrue. It's been made clear that responsibility for welfare payments, including pensions, in an independent Scotland would pass to the Scottish government, that is the independent Scottish government, on day one of independence. No debate. This is known as...
Let's have a look at what Blackford had to say.
Indeed.
Okay.
On that prospect for independence, there's recently been a debate about pensions in Scotland, and you've said that the UK government will have to pay pensions in Scotland on independence. That's a complete reversal of the previous SNP policy of the 2014 referendum.
This was an issue that was discussed in 2014, and actually the Chief... Well, let's be clear on this, because the Chief Secretary to the Treasury made it clear at that point that the UK retained an obligation to pay pensions to those that had paid national insurance. That's a matter of precedence. If you
take the Scottish Government's white paper said the Scottish Government on independence would take responsibility for pensions. You're saying they won't anymore.
The Scottish Government will take responsibility to look after its pensioners. Let's not forget.
Not pay them.
Let's not forget we have the lowest state pension in Western Europe at the moment. Our pensioners are being shortchanged. It's Westminster that's removed the triple lock. The point is that it's an obligation on the UK government to meet the commitment to pensioners that have paid national insurance contributions. They have paid for the right to receive that pension. Now, you could argue about the mechanism as to how that's transferred, and that will be debated. But it's right that the UK government meets its commitment to pensioners, regardless of where they are. If you or I, as UK citizens, go and live in another European country, then our right to that UK pension remains. The Scottish pensioners have that right. They have paid national insurance over a long period to get that. That will remain.
I'm sorry, but you know, national insurance only covers current pensions, not previous pensions.
No, you're paying national insurance as an entitlement to a future pension. That's the whole point of the principle. You pay into a national insurance fund. Okay, the UK is then responsible for the disbursements of that, and it covers cash flow for a certain period. But that's a right to a UK pension. There's no ifs, there's no buts about that.
Ian Blackford, thank you very much indeed.
Right, okay, well, how many lies did you count in there?
Well, I really love this site. Oh, it's amazing. I love the idea that, oh yes, of course, UK pensioners, wherever they live, sure, they do have a right to a UK pension, as long as they will remain within the UK, Bunter. Not if you leave and decide that you want to be a foreign country, which is what Scotland would be in the event that Scotland becomes independent. So complete nonsense. So as he said in there, he's claiming that, oh no, there's a precedent here because somebody in the Treasury said UK government will pay UK pensions. Yes, they will. UK pensions, absolutely. Scotland will not be in the UK. It will be independent if Blackford gets its way. So total nonsense. And this fact is, I don't even know anybody who's doubting this. Commentators, civil servants, MPs alike, but not apparently the increasingly hysterical and frankly irrational Euan Blackwell. Now, as the guy said here, the 2014 Independence White Paper confirmed that Scotland, an independent Scotland, would have to meet its own payment for pensions. Blackford is saying, no, we will bear responsibility to look after our pensioners. Well, we all know the SNP's abysmal record of care for the elderly, so I'm not sure if that was a threat from Blackford, but I certainly wouldn't want to be looked after by the SNP if I was a pensioner. But
the thing that strikes me a little bit strange about this is that why now, and why would they put this together now?
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't get it either. That's the question
to be asked.
Indeed, but he was in far more comfortable ground for himself when he started talking the usual sound bites about, oh yes, of course, the UK state pension's the lowest in Western Europe. Really? Well, you'll have no trouble funding it in that case then, Bunter. And he also, of course, made the obligatory mention of Westminster removing the triple lock, which guarantees pensions retain their value. In other words, so what Blackford's saying here is he feels the UK state pension is so miserly that he wants the UK to keep paying it in perpetuity to citizens in an independent Scotland. Plus, he wants an insurance that it's going to be index linked. So he hates it, but he wants us to keep paying for it for him. It's like the Woody Allen joke. It's like the Woody Allen joke. The two old people in a hotel, one says, God, the food here's terrible. The other says, yeah, I know, in such small portions too. But it's just an absolute joke. But in one of the tweets of the year, I don't know if you saw it, Mark, did you see the tweet from John Ferry today?
Oh, yes, I think I did see that one.
Right,
yes.
Absolutely brilliant. He just used, he paraphrased Blackford's own rhetoric on this issue, and he said, can you tell us why Scotland would be uniquely incapable of paying the state pension for its citizens? Why do you believe it necessary for a foreign country to pay Scotland's state pensions instead? Euan Blackford, do you believe Scotland is too wee, too poor and too stupid to be able to pay pensions? What's your answer to that, Bunter Blackford? So he's just making himself look ridiculous in this. I mean,
well, we saw the same thing as well later and today when Nicola Sturgeon, she repeated the claims that pensions would be paid by the independent Scotland. I don't really understand this because it's been clear from day one that they said that wasn't going to happen, that Scotland was going to pay for them. Everyone knows there is no such thing as a pension pot. And where is the money going to come from? So all it does now is, to me, it puts the fear of God into most pensioners, I think, and who say, well, this is uncertainty is bad enough. The fact there's an uncertainty. Are they really trying to make hay off of the idea that?
I think it's just making the whole situation very murky,
right.
and confusing for pensioners in order to make their decision. It is so murky, and the repeated lies. We don't know who's going where with this. We don't know.
Well, yeah, indeed. They just said there would be an exodus of people over the border into England or Wales, maybe probably not Wales, considering they have devolution as well. And people feel their pensions are unsafe. This was one of the major issues why people voted against separation in 2014, because people felt that the Scottish government may or may not be able to pay pensions. I mean, and that's
exactly. A couple of questions here. Miller Dugan is saying, as much as he detests Blackford, isn't it true that the UK pays expats pensions? Yes, they do, Miller. They pay UK citizens pensions. When Scotland becomes independent, those Scottish citizens are no longer UK citizens. Therefore, the UK government has no obligation to pay them anything and will not pay them anything. So you have to make this distinction, guys. Wherever you live, you get a UK pension. Yes, as long as you remain in the UK. If you elect to leave the UK, all bets are off, guys. It's up to the country you choose to become to pay your state pension as of that day. Now, please be
Well,
clear.
of course, there's a thing.
Absolutely
If after separation, if the Scottish pound went down the toilet, which is likely,
Yep.
then if you were still getting paid in UK pounds, you'd be like, oh, this is good. But that's not the case. It's going to happen. What's going to happen is you're going to get paid in Scottish pounds, which are going to be worth even less. And then when you want to go on your holidays in England, you can't afford it. But like going, people coming from Venezuela, coming to London, some streets are paved with gold type of nonsense. That's mixing a couple of things up, but you get the idea.
Absolutely.
But the thing is interesting, I guess, again, as I said, that Sturgeon put this out, and today when she was talking in Parliament and kind of mocking the Tories for bringing it up, and we're like, well, wait a minute, but it's just you're going to be found out straight away. And I don't have the clip here right now, but I was quite astonished by. Well, I'm not really astonished.
Murdo Fraser asked the question, and then Nicola flipped it on him, saying that he was concerned.
Yeah, and I was astonished by her tone, her condescending and condescending tone, which is I really think is very unbecoming. I mean, if anyone talked like that in a public setting, I would be like, what's going on here? This isn't the way to talk to people. And the constant belittling, evasion, mockery, and condescension to her opponents I think is very tiresome to watch.
I think it's illustrative of the fact that I think she's getting close to having had enough. This is very much how Margaret Thatcher was towards the end, just before she was knifed in the back famously by her cabinet colleagues. She was displaying the very same traits, and I see echoes. Yeah, I see echoes of that in stuff.
Well, there's no sign of her being knifed in the back by her own colleagues. It would be different.
It's against the rules, Mark. It's against the rules.
Tory party, perhaps. But we can discuss that later. So I think we did that. We did that quite well. So let's move on to our next segment. So coming up is going to be Niall is going to be talking about Glasgow Cabbie protest that he attended, and after that, we'll be talking about indoctrination in Scottish universities, and later Zoomer of the week. So see you back in a second.
All right, so
now
on Monday night, 8 p.m. on a Monday night, on a cold, blustery Glasgow evening, I made my way into the city centre of Glasgow, just off George Square, to a Stewart Street police station, where there was a man that goes by the Glasgow Cabbie, who had assembled a sort of ad hoc group to file a complaint against the police and the Scottish Government for the sex surveys that went out to the schools. And I think we can all agree that it's a deplorable 14, 15, 16-year-olds being asked very strange questions. A question that if we were to ask, we would be put in jail. And
let's hear the Glasgow Cabbie. He expresses it pretty well. So
yes,
we can get him on here.
For the Scottish Government, to my mind, are committing a crime. That crime is sex abuse of children in Scotland. If I was to stand in Buchanan Street with any lady in here, any lady at all, and ask the questions directly from the survey, directly from the Scottish Government survey to 14 and 15-year-olds, I would be arrested in minutes. I would be charged with sex offences. So therefore, what gives the Scottish Government a right to challenge our children, put them under severe pressure to answer paedophilic questions at school where they could be embarrassed by their peers? This is a crime being committed in front of each and every one of us. Yep. And I'm so glad that you...
Right, is that enough of that one?
That's quite enough, yep. So you'll see standing behind him in the orange jacket is a man that goes by the name of Richard Lucas. So he's the leader of the family party. So he was there. He has got all the evidence on this. It even goes into who's in charge of putting out the sex survey. He knows everything and he can tie them up in knots. So Richard Lucas is going to be a very interesting character going on in the next sort of 12 to 24 months. And, you know, it was good to actually be in a group of people that were just all fearful of what is actually happening in the schools. We're lucky that 10 local authorities sort of rebelled against the government and said, no, we're not putting a survey out. It's not going to happen. So it's so bad. It's, in my mind, they are lowering the age of consent in plain view. And it's so bizarre. And again, I feel it's so difficult to talk about this subject because everyone's got strong feelings about this, and it just makes my skin crawl and my blood boil. It really does. And
there's Heavenly Malvex is saying, well, would you ask each other on this podcast? No, of course you wouldn't. Well, we might ask as a joke, but we wouldn't ask seriously. And certainly if there were youngsters on the show, we certainly wouldn't do that. As the cabbie says, if we went hanging around schools asking them questions about their sexuality, we'd be, busted pretty fast, and quite rightly so. I think one of these things about these protests is that there's quite a lot of these protests going on now, but they're not, they're a bit different from what they're basically anti-Sturgeon and anti-SNP protests, right? Yeah. But they're not a bunch of people who are flag wavers.
No, these are concerned citizens, Mark.
Yeah,
absolutely.
They are fearful. Their parents, their grandparents, and they're very concerned. Very, very concerned.
Yeah, so we saw that.
People have pulled their
kids
out of school over this.
Yep.
Oh, really?
Yep.
We saw that protest. And then a couple of weekends ago, there was a giant, anti-vaccine passports protest. And that was maybe 3,000 or 4,000 people. Of course, the media didn't actually, promote it. Instead, they decided to promote the SNP, the Nationalist March that had 297 people and a couple of stray dogs in it. So instead, but these thousands of people who are out there for the anti-mask thing, I'm pretty certain that they're all against Sturgeon. And these people at the Glasgow Cabbie protests, again, they're all Sturgeons, but they're not waving a flag saying we want to be part of Britain. They're saying we don't like this administration and we want change. So I think there is quite a feeling now that these groups are that there are groups that are growing up and are getting some strength and beginning to be able to protest properly. That's my personal feeling on it.
I'm seeing some good comments coming in 2 seconds. Definitely, I see Richard Lucas is the first one who called out Swinney for the material and sex ed at school. Yes, that's correct. He's been on this charge for a while. And James Sanderson makes a good point. So where is Mary Black these days? Yep. I would have thought she'd have delighted about the survey because she was the first one, if I can call back. She brought in a drag act into schools by the name of Flow Job.
Flow Job, that's right.
To read children's stories to kids. And in some sick, perverted world, that is normal.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like just the idea that, I'm not a social conservative by any means. I got many friends who, in the past, used to do a lot of partying, going out with people who were drag queens. Lots of my friends are that. They do that all the time, but I don't think they would dream of going into schools to do that. It's just it's not appropriate behaviour. That's adult behaviour. They deserve to stay in the club or on RuPaul's Drag Race or whatever it is, and not be in the schools.
Couldn't agree more, gentlemen. Very distasteful and very, very concerning, very disturbing.
Once again, thanks to the Glasgow Cabbie. So the police said we couldn't file the complaint that night because there was an issue with COVID in the police station, which the whole crowd erupted in laughter. And Richard Lucas, again, he was on great form, educating everyone in attendance to the gravity of the situation, which is immense. It is. But taken away from this topic and onto someone else, we've got our special guest coming up, Councillor Euan Blockley of the Scottish Tories, to take us off this deplorable subject and onto something a bit lighter. Thank God.
A bit more wholesome, yeah.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So we'll move on next. Actually, but first we're going to talk about SNP indoctrination in our universities. That's the wrong button. Press the wrong button. There we go.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the other day, I was kind of surprised to see this thing from St Andrews University. I'll put it up on the screen here, and hopefully it'll come in. You can see it there. It's called Scotland's Future Series, and it says here, I'm writing to let you know about a new initiative we're launching to stimulate discussion and debate about Scotland's future. Okay, fair enough. And then I found that this is actually a contest. It's being run by Stephen Gethins, and this guy Gethins is a ex-SNP MP, Westminster MP, and it really strikes me as being quite insidious. In fact, we got this. I'll tell you how we got this. We got this from a tip that a viewer or a person who follows us on Twitter sent in anonymously. And this person said that they were concerned that Gethins, as an SNP MP, was using the university's resources to indoctrinate students. And the way this works is that they've set up a set of prizes and contests for submissions from students and people in the faculty to win with £1,000 or £3,000 for doing workshops or papers on Scotland's future. Now, can you imagine that this thing is run by an SNP MP? Could you imagine that what kind of submissions would actually win or even be accepted for this?
Well, it's not going to be objective at all.
So what about a study on abolishing Holyrood?
Yeah,
how do you think that would go down?
Let's do that instead.
Right, or a study on how much the SNP have wasted on various projects, including ferries.
Quite.
Or what about a seminar on the corrosive effects of nationalism in Scotland? Now we can see immediately that these things, these are never going to get daylight. In fact, what they have, if we look back at the thing here, so I've got to back here, it says examples of things. You probably can't read this, but anyway, one of them is the future of the Anglo-Scottish border in the event of independence. Now, can you imagine that you could make something that says, well, there's not going to be any independence, so there's no path to it. So why on earth would we do this? Mm-hmm. Now that thing is just not going to be accepted. A university staff member said, academia should remain neutral and not be influenced to write papers via inducement on behalf of the nationalists. And beyond that, they said that Gethins is an invidious influence at the university. That means he's everywhere trying to put his influence out to try and brainwash our students who don't actually know any better. I talked to one of the students at St Andrews University, and they thought this was quite a good idea because they see it as, oh, we'll write something about Scotland. But when they're writing something about Scotland, they're not writing something about unity across the UK. They're not writing about the problems of the SNP. They're not writing about nationalism and its dangers. And I think this is the real problem.
I mean, Heavenly Malbec gets closest to the truth, it looks like. Uni students will be cheaper than the civil servants that Sturgeon is using to build the case. That's the closest thing to the truth. It really is.
Yeah, someone asked there, what's his position? His position is strategic advisor on external relations, and whatever that means. Maybe basically strategic propaganda minister.
What is this external relations mean? Does that mean relations with people outside? What does it mean?
Well, that's a good point. Another question that should come from this is, where is this money coming from? Is this university money that's being used to fulfill a nationalist project? Or is it, is it outside money? Does it come from the SNP? Does it come from nationalist donors? Does it come from China or somewhere else? Where is the money coming from? And why is the university's money, which is, I think, a combination of grants and so on, why is that being used to support nationalism?
Just when you mentioned China there, so I've been on the investigative train on the universities and where they're getting all the money for a long time. And it's my firm belief that the Confucius Institutes that operate within the universities, that is where the money is going. They're getting money from the Chinese government to teach and educate the CCP members' families as they come over here, and they're not getting told our curriculum. The curriculum will be altered to meet the communist requirements. So this is what it does. It creates a conveyor belt of these radical Marxists, and this is why we've got indoctrination in the universities. It's as simple as that.
I think, I mean, obviously the Chinese issue is something that we don't deal with here, and Chinese influence in universities is an issue. And even the fact that Chinese students are coming to universities and paying as paid students, whether it's government influence or not, is an issue as well. We talk. I mean, I think here the thing is more insidious, because, you know, they basically have, in that one university, they've assigned £35,000 for students to write nationalist projects. Now, we've just done our before we even heard this news. Excuse me. We had started a crowdfunding campaign to make the majority youth outreach fund, and what we're doing there is we want to do contests and competitions that have the idea of promoting unity, tolerance, and togetherness across the UK, and that can include articles, artwork, photography, and so on. Yeah. We raised £1,000 in crowdfunding in a few days, which was quite good, and from private donors we raised another £2,000. That's still £3,000, which is a good result. It's
a great initiative, Mark. It really is.
Right, but they have got £35,000 in one university.
Yeah,
and that's it's a real shocker. So if you can, this isn't actually supposed to be a message for people to donate, but we do need to put our money where our mouth is. If you want to do outreach to young people, and young people are 79% of 16 to 24-year-olds are pro-independence because they want to be independent, then how do you reach out to those people and say there is an alternative? Our thing has always been about bolstering our existing community, first of all. So there are people out there who have no support in the universities, people who might want to say, you might want to be active politically or want to do art that isn't supported by nationals, and want to do projects like these projects that Gethens is trying to get people to do, but how do they do those projects and be, if you've got a choice, you're going to go, all right, I'll go for this one with a 3,000 prize, or I'll go to this one that's got nothing because no one's putting anything in. So at least we'll get something there to say, look, there's something here for you, and we can start to build up youth projects, youth groups, and so on. And I think that's the first stage. Find people like who want to fight back, because ultimately the SNP establishment is the establishment, right? Young people should be rebelling against the establishment, not cowing to it and doing work for it.
Punk is dead, Mark. Punk is dead. It's no coming back either.
We need punk. That's right. We need punk.
We need Sid Vicious. We need Johnny Rotten.
That's the cool thing. Yes. Right? Let's get the kids out there. The kids will be all right. I have faith in them. And I think that a lot of this kids are, going to vote for independence. Yeah, sure enough. But when they're actually, they're not all that daft. So many smart kids in there. We need to reach out to them and say there's other ways.
Absolutely.
A lot of great comments coming in. Keep them firing, guys.
James Slater absolutely hit the nail on the head here. Where is the Holyrood opposition in this indoctrination? They should be all over it, as it's been going on for quite a while now. Frankly, James, I think you hear
quite a while is an understatement.
Exactly.
As well.
You hear more passionate rebuttals of the SNP's ideas from the three of us than you'll ever do from all the opposition MSPs combined.
Because
we are the opposition, David.
Exactly.
We the people.
Right. Exactly. Well, anyway, please help us in our majority outreach majority youth outreach fund. All donations will go into projects to support young people against nationalism. All right, we're going to move on. Next up, we're going to talk with Euan Blockley, who's councillor in Glasgow, and let's see.
In the Wind Ward.
Well, I better get him on then.
I suppose it's time. There he is.
There
Hello.
he is. Hi.
Hey,
How
Euan.
are you doing today?
I'm not too bad. Yourself? How you keeping?
We are doing just
Excellent,
great.
actually.
We're getting through this podcast. Lots of good comments coming in,
Fantastic.
and we're happy to have a new face on board, and we hope you can stay with us through the Zoomer of the week. We've got a few interesting candidates, but I think what we wanted to do was just if you give us a brief introduction, what you're doing, and some issues that are important to you right now.
Yep. So for those that don't know me, I'm Euan Blockley. I'm the councillor, Glasgow Conservative councillor for Lynn Ward in the south side of Glasgow. So that's kind of Castlemilk, Croftfoot, Carmunnock. And I think one of the big issues that has been coming up on the doorsteps, indeed, when I was out campaigning today, is refuse. And it was something that one of you brought up about rats in particular. That's a big, big problem. But it's just the cleansing crisis that we're having in the city at the moment. And, you know, you've got the leader of the council, Susan Aitken, saying that all it needs is a wee spruce up. Well, maybe in the posh area that she lives in, but if you go anywhere in my ward, you'll see, you know, overflowing bins, you'll see rats. I had rats in my old close. We couldn't get them out. I had to get the pest control people out. And I'm a councillor, so I was contacting the local authorities.
That's insane. That's insane.
And it's everywhere.
Absolutely insane.
They've allowed Glasgow to become a rat-infested midden. Like, I mean, that's the honest truth of it. And you know, we've got.
And it's not just you know, in your area. I'm actually, you know, I'll confess that you know, my parents were from Castlemilk, and I you know, spent quite a lot of time there when I was young. They grew up there, and before we moved down to Ayrshire. But you know, so you know, that's, most people would say that's you know, maybe not one of the wealthier areas in Glasgow, but I think the problem is well spread all across Glasgow.
Yeah, and look, there's a real strong community spirit in these places, and I think that's why people are rightly so angry, because they're looking at the deterioration of their services. They're looking, every year we appear to be and are paying more in council tax every year, but our bin collections are being cut. There's a bulk uplift charge that's been introduced. You know, we're seeing worse and worse services, but we appear to be paying more and more each year, all while they're council officers that are earning, you know, big bucks. You've got neighbourhood coordinators now that they've put in place that are earning 70 grand a year, and they're refusing to put any money in the frontline staff. It's idiocy at the highest level. And honestly, I really do struggle to listen to Councillor Aitken without banging my head off a wall, because you just...
You and everyone else. And everyone else.
The disconnect between normal, hard-working Glaswegians and the SNP, Labour and the Greens in the city chambers is palpable. Like, honestly, it's just idiocy of the highest degree.
Well, that's politics to some extent. I mean, we're looking at it from the outside, and we see quite a bit of idiocy, we have to say. But I mean, actually, we can turn off the podcast at the end of the day. You know, you have to go and work with it.
You have to keep fighting onward, Euan.
So that's quite a problem with the. In fact, I think that was the thing that Glasgow Cabbie started with as well, wasn't it? He was bringing attention to that. And there's a guy in the union as well, who has the rat, you know, that inflatable rat, which is cool as well. So some people are really trying to deal with it, but you think this is a basic. I always wonder about this. It's like a basic service. Can you not just get the basics right? It's not too difficult to get a truck to go around and get the trash. People have been doing that, you know, since decades, right? It shouldn't be that difficult. And some of these people are paid. The people in the cleansing department stuff, the heads and that, these people are paid fantastical amounts of money.
Where are we paying people to go around
why is it not being
tape
done?
up and tape around fly tipping? So that to me is such a waste of money. It's criminal. So we're sending somebody out to tape it up instead of just lift it.
Because it's much better for Councillor Aitken and the SNP to get in the papers than to actually do the job that they're paid to do. That's the thing you realise.
Well, we've talked about that a bit I talked quite a bit about that in this podcast about virtue signalling government, whether it's the Scottish whether it's the Scottish Government itself or whether it's a Glasgow Council. You also have some issue with the SNP plans to charge for people to park at their workplace. How have you been on with that?
So they've introduced, as part of their active travel plan, they've introduced a parking levy. That's what they're going to push for in the SNP's ever quest to their war on the motorist, and they've touted this plan before, the SNP car park tax, and it was quietly dropped because I think the SNP will have done the same canvassing as us and realised that going to war with the motorist is probably not the best idea. But now it's back because, of course, the SNP are trying to placate the Greens in the hope of another shady deal probably after May's elections. And so they're putting forward this stuff that is going to, hit the pockets of people who are already struggling with the cost of living crisis, already struggling with higher council tax, and they're going to hit them now for just parking at work. I mean, an example is my mum's a teacher, and she is unable to get public transport to get all of the stuff that she marks each night back to the school, right? She wouldn't be able to get on a bus and carry all of that, right, to her work. But yet the SNP now want to charge my mother and many other teachers and nurses and cleaners and other people who necessarily do not have the means to be paying for a levy, but they don't care. They don't care because at the end of the day, they're disconnected. They're completely disconnected from the people of Glasgow. That's why they think this is a good idea in the first place. Any conversation with an average voter would have put this up as a clear failure and something you didn't want to do. But the SNP don't speak to any of it.
It's a whole anti-car agenda. I mean, the people think you can get around on a bike. You can go to Glasgow city centre, go to McDonald's, go to B&Q, whatever it is, and on your bike. Or you think a young mother can take her kids to school on a bike. Yeah, it doesn't work. I mean, maybe in Malaysia somewhere we can get 10 people on a bike, and stuff like that. Maybe, but not in Scotland where it's raining every day almost. And the wind's blowing. Imagine going out today, and the wind was battering off the windows here not that long ago. Imagine doing that, going out and that without on a bike, or even in public transport, we have to stand, in some dodgy bus shelter and wait, possibly be attacked by somebody. It's just, I'm not joking. It's like, that's the thing, isn't it?
That's right. It's a very real threat. Absolutely. Anyway. It's like sometimes taking public transport is you're taking your life in your hands, aren't you? But the idea of
sometimes you get rid of that. As Gary Newman said, here in my car, I feel safest of all.
Exactly.
And I think people, many of these, the Greens, and certainly have this idea that we'll all cycle to work across green hills, and everything will be hit. There won't be any buildings, there won't be any people or anything like that. But that's not.
We'll be gliding along effortlessly on a zero energy device. So there was a question that was posed to you, Euan, from Heavenly Malgate. What does a neighbourhood coordinator actually do?
That is a brilliant question, and it's something I'm still trying to work out.
And it's 70 grand a year, you said?
Yes. So that was the rough salary when it was advertised. So neighbourhood coordinators, so we've got a very different strategy from the SNP. We want to put that money directly into frontline staff because that's kind of where the money's needed. I think that's probably safe to say, considering the cleansing staff have been cut repeatedly. The SNP's idea of dealing with the cleansing crisis, that isn't happening at all, of course, we just need to spruce up. But their idea of fixing the cleansing crisis was to hire essentially a bunch of bureaucrats that work for the council and put one person and another person together, and then that's their job done. I don't think that's worth £70,000 a year. I mean, I'll be honest, there's council officers in there earning over 150 grand a year. I think that's probably a good place to be cutting some salaries there as well, and that's something that we as Glasgow Conservatives are very keen on. But yeah, I mean, the neighbourhood coordinators, it's a joke. Now, I have to say, I know some of the individuals and they're lovely people, but they do not. It's not a necessary position, and it is not worth £70,000 a year. That money could be going to 2, possibly even 3 if junior. Cleansing staff, like that is where the money should go. That's where people like taxpayers expect their cash to go. When I pay my council tax, I want it to go to picking up the bins. I want it to go to, cleaning the streets. I want it to be fixing pavements, potholes, and street lights. I don't want money to be going to 70 grand a year bureaucrats that's sole job is to email people. I don't think that's worth the money.
Sick.
It's nice work if you can get it, I guess. But it's not good for anyone else. I mean, really, when we see stuff like COP26 and all these, high level things, and that
all the work that went in
can't
there.
you just empty the bins?
Yeah.
I had a friend come over, right? He lives in Tokyo. He's a Canadian, and he came over to me, and I met him. I hadn't seen him in a bunch of years. And the first thing he says to me, "Oh, it's a shame about all the rubbish here."
Yeah, absolutely.
And he said something like, "Well, you just got to kind of look at the stars." And I was like so embarrassed. I can feel it now.
Yeah.
I was just like,
it's galling.
It's a complete
why?
riddy.
It's so embarrassing.
It's a riddy. And the thing is, I've got German cousins who come over here semi-regularly, and they were up just pre-pandemic, and that was before even the cleansing crisis reached its worst state. And they were just talking about the state of the roads, the state of the streets. And it is embarrassing. You do get that whole, because we're so proud. I'm so proud to live in Glasgow. I love my city. And to watch it deteriorated to this level is a disgrace. Like, it's criminal negligence in areas.
And stuff like as well, when I first came back, driving around, I'd been away for a long time. I was overseas for 26 years. I came back and driving around at first. And, the first it was like the summer, and driving around, you can't see much rubbish at the side of the road. But when it gets to winter and all the bushes, all the leaves go off, and you look at the sides of the roads, and you're just like, what? It's just trash, rubbish all the way across, and you're just like, what? First of all, it's the people do that. First of all, you think, why do people do that? But the second part is like, why isn't it just been cleaned up? It's really shocking. I think visitors coming here must be like, what is going on here?
There's a final. Sorry to interrupt you, David, but there's a final point I'd like to mention on this, because the whole reason why we are where we are at the moment is because the Scottish Government are consistently cutting local government budgets. And when you end up as a councillor, as I'm doing right now as part of the Glasgow Conservative Group to set our budget, we're looking at a cut of 30 million. Last year it was about 30 million. Year before that was about 50 million. And then Nicola Sturgeon is wondering why we're suffering for these issues. Well, because we're having to consistently cut our budget every year. The cleansing staff haven't had a pay rise. You're looking at GMB, for example. And whilst they're sitting on a 400 million quid underspend, they're sitting on money that's been given from Westminster to the Scottish Parliament. They could easily plug that gap in local government finance, but they refuse to do it. And the real question is, why is that the case? Why are they not funding local government properly? And the honest truth is because they don't care. They don't care about local government. They'd much rather it was centralised to Hollywood. They're not interested in these decentralised.
Well,
thanks for enlightening us on this.
If they could centralise the bin collection and actually make it work, but the thing is, they wouldn't do that. They would just fill it full of bureaucrats and people whose real job is to blame Westminster. Because then that's what happened. That's what they would do. Actually, they would centralise it to Holyrood, and then they'd say, "Well, Westminster doesn't give us enough money."
Yes, you haven't given us the levers to empty the rubbish. Sorry,
and it's just a disaster. Anyway, thanks, Euan. That's been really great. I hope you'll stay with us for a little bit. We always do.
I love your passion there, Euan. It really does shine through.
Great to hear. Yeah, brilliant.
Right. Okay. So moving on. Well, I had some extra graphics for this today, but because I changed computer, we couldn't actually use them, and they were still great too. But we will next week. We will have extra special graphics for the Zoomer of the week. But today,
let us know who you think the Zoomer is, guys. Let us know.
But today, comments. Yes, of course, we've got quite a few options today, as we usually do. In fact, today could be a bumper week. But anyway, in fact, we're going to start with Niall.
Right, so this has got to be right. I can't look at the story without laughing. Right, I've not got a name, a person. I've not got. It's whoever it is that had the idea. This genius idea. That somebody put a seed in someone's head, and this genius idea popped out. And to improve the ventilation in Scottish classrooms, what we really need to do: forget windows, forget the windows. Forget door stops. We need to cut the bottoms off of doors, and this will solve the COVID issue immediately. And you know what? Somebody, SNP top brass, heard that idea, and they were like, "Roll with it. go. And it's just so incredibly ridiculous. And we know what's going to happen. It's £300,000 to cut the bottoms off.
Yep.
A year's time, 2 years' time, whenever they decide that COVID's ended, because, by the way, they'll decide when it's ending, that's when they'll have to replace all the doors again.
I just
So
can't
another
even,
300 grand to another
it's so bizarre,
contractor.
you can't almost contemplate it.
It's true. Yep.
Only a warped
out of
mind would come up with an idea as such. It's so bad, but it's so stupid. But again, it's the SNP we're dealing with here. So stupid's still on the table, guys.
This is
Well, I mean, how does it work? You go and you cut the bottom of the door off.
Yep.
And then, but what if it's a fire door, for example?
Exactly.
What's the
So,
of course it's a fire door.
For this kind of
what happens is you just don't have any fires, so you'll be all right.
Oh, that's it. Yes. Okay.
Well,
That's probably the
it
thinking
must
there.
be a fire door. They're designed to contain fires. So it's not going to be able to be done. But
So,
Here we go.
Euan, here's your Scottish Tories. Got quite a nice wee thing out there with Nicola doing the sawing.
did you have any creative input in that, Euan? No.
I know the guy that did it, and I'll tell you, he's very talented.
Yes.
That's very good. I mean, that's what it's like. Is she going to get out there and like do a wee bit of carpentry skills and what's she going to do with the off-cuts, you know? Make a boat or something?
It's like the joke, the guy going to the pub saying, "Oh, the wife's on the plane now. Oh, she's going abroad. No, she's sawing the bottom of the door off." It's just like, what an absolute joke. But she said this is to, what was her excuse or justification was, having adequate spaces under doors is an important way of improving airflow in some spaces.
Inhibits the flow of air,
That's it, yeah.
David.
It's just staggering. Listen, I always think back to things I've heard which are similar to this. And I remember when the Gorbals flats were demolished in the 60s and they built Hutchison Town, and they had the infamous Hutchison Town E flats, which were designed for an Algerian climate, it emerged. But they put them in the south side of Glasgow where it rains every 5 minutes. So as a result, they were plagued with damp. And the residents were told, the reason you've got damp is your houses are not well enough ventilated. So what you need to do is turn your radiators full up and leave your windows open. Brilliant. That will do it. So you can see that same sort of progressive thinking is alive and well in Scotland these days. Honestly, guys, I mean, this is like, you can only laugh at this.
Definitely. I mean, I don't know. We should just award this as the winner straight up. I mean, really. But it's so ridiculous.
Yep.
It just defies belief. It's like one of those things. It reminds me a little bit of one of those things in the communist countries where they had a road with two. They have a road and it's got a marking down the middle. Right, and they say we're going to increase the capacity in this road, so we're going to put two lines down, you know, to make it a 3-lane road. It doesn't quite work. That kind of daft, it's that kind of level. It's like this kind of thing should just go, you know, around the world for idiocy and government.
It's one that potentially could go viral, and her justification was just so bizarre as well. You know, it inhibits the flow of air. What's a door for?
Can't you just open the windows? I mean, really,
well, honestly, we can't just open the windows. I mean, seriously.
Niall, I don't know if you saw, the First Minister had said this afternoon when asked by Douglas Ross and had given the assurance that she'd spoken to the Fire Brigades Union, but it's since come out that the Fire Brigades Union had absolutely no knowledge of this. And we're completely against the idea on health and safety. So it's proof once again that you can't trust a word she says.
Well, it's bizarre that the idea has been formulated in the first place, but then not to realise that it could be a fire safety issue is then again just totally ignored. Just totally ignored. So I mean, they're just flying by the seat of their pants. They honestly are.
But Niall, if you criticise, you're talking Scotland down. Remember,
so
you
can't do
that.
I hope you're not doing that.
Scotland up.
You shouldn't be doing that. Don't do that. Moving on. Right, well, I've got a couple of candidates for today. David, you're going to be last on.
Okay.
Got a couple of candidates today. First off is Mr. Gordon Brown, who seems to be, who's the architect, one of the architects of devolution, but also seems to be trying to do everything he can to sabotage our efforts to, you know, fight the nationalists right now. Now, I wasn't around here in the Gordon Brown years. I don't know, so I have a different idea of that. Oh, yeah, but this is what he says down here. In a CNN interview, the former Prime Minister discussed the rise of populist nationalists, including Steve Bannon, who nobody cares about, and Marine Le Pen, who we don't care about. But he also offered a dim view of Unionist current prospects of keeping the United Kingdom together if there's another Scottish independence. Brown said, at the moment, it looks as if Unionists might not win this. No. Well, that is well. Thanks for the vote of confidence there, Gordon.
Cheers, Gordon. Cheers.
I mean, really, what kind of thing is that? I you know, like, first of all, there's no path to a second referendum, as we never tire saying of that in this channel. Yep. And even if there was a path, the appetite for a referendum is really in a bunch of hardcore nutter SNP aficionados, and it's not really in the public thing. What the public want, I think, as we all know, is they want the bins collected on time, and that's what Euan's helping with, and that's basically the truth of it. People want their actual services. The devolved government was set up not to as a vehicle for breaking away and making a new country. It was actually set up to give people better services. Yeah. Right? That's what it was set up for, and make people closer to their government. In some ways, I think now we're further away from our government, even though it's physically closer, but the government is actually further away from the actual people. Yeah. So that was my first choice.
Well, who's your second one then? Who's your second?
Well, that has to be Adam Tomkins. And Adam Tomkins was on there talking about the idea that the other day he was saying when Ian Murray stood up. What did Ian Murray stand up and say again? Niall, you remember that?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. Because I don't know.
I've not seen this. I've not seen this.
No. Yeah, I know this. Wait a second. Oh, Ian
if
Murray,
you can get it, I hope it's hilarious.
No,
was it not about giving more powers to more devolved powers to the Scottish Parliament? Was that not what it was?
Yes, I know what it was.
Yes, that's what it was.
It was yes, it was along that lines. I'm sorry I didn't have my notes here. But anyway, Tomkins' response to this was muscular unionism was stupid, self-defeating and rightly abandoned when Whitehall flirted with it last year. What flirting?
I know we've never even.
There was no muscular unionism. There hasn't been any muscular unionism at all. In fact, people like Tomkins have been just appeasing at every direction. There is nothing that no new power they won't give to the SNP. There's no article they won't write supporting the SNP. And Tomkins had a whole load of stuff written about this, and basically saying, well, instead of fighting the power grab, he just say, well, let them have more powers all the time. So actually, originally, I was going to give him my choice for Zoomer, but I'm actually going to go for Gordon Brown.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's a fair choice. Out of the both of them, I think Gordon Brown. Just to jump in the whole Gordon Brown thing, he's totally wrong. So if let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in this, but I could go through a mathematical blackboard for you and mathematically show you that the SNP cannot win another independence referendum. They can't win independence 2. But they've got the only option for them to get independence is Indy free. So unless you want to sign up to a trilogy of referendums, honestly, just abandon them. They're up a creek without a paddle. And I don't know what Gordon Brown's playing at doing this. No idea. None.
Well, I don't know. It just seems that he just likes to stick his finger in wherever he can. And I don't know. I mean, as I said, I wasn't around at the time, but he seems to me very much yesterday's man with yesterday's ideas. It's a bit like the guy he broke the vase in the store, and he's got all kinds of ideas how to fix it. And it's just like, get out, you're causing more trouble than you're causing more trouble. You're making it worse all the time,
Right.
Oh, yes. This thing now I remember, sorry. The thing with Ian Murray was that he demanded that the UK intervene in using the civil service to prepare for an independent
referendum bill, yeah.
That's right. And I mean, Ian Murray stood up and said, well, why are they spending money on this? And then Tomkins is like, well, no, you shouldn't interfere. You know, just let them do it. Just let them do all their planning with public money. And
thanks,
you know,
Adam.
just let them get on with it. Of course, you know, no harm will ever come of it at all. You know, it's just giving up at every opportunity. And these people, you know, I know you're in the same party, but we need people, you know, with a passion to say, no, there's a line in the sand. You lost, and we will not accept this.
Yeah,
we need to move on and to do that and stop this kind of appeasement. It doesn't do anyone any good.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more.
Thank you.
Right, I'm eagerly anticipating.
You guys here just to agree with my rants, I suppose.
Eagerly anticipating.
Okay, moving on. Land, we will do our final Zoomer. It's going to be okay.
So I think
David,
this is my nomination. I usually have some humour in this, as I try to inject in most of this thing I say, but there's nothing remotely funny about my nomination this week. Yet again, we've seen a senior SNP figure, this time John Swinney, posing for a photograph with a group of school children at Auschwitz, of all places. Now, we've already seen Nicola Sturgeon standing gazing wistfully into the distance at the very same spot. And now we've got Swinney arranging a group of children just to make sure you get the arch in the background. Now, to me, I've been to the Holocaust Memorial in Berlin. I don't know if you've ever been. It is the most harrowing event I've ever willingly undertaken. You come out of that place after listening to those stories in absolute pieces. Let me tell you, the last thing you want to do is take a bloody photograph. It's the last thing you want to do, unless you're just an inveterate poseur who wants to say, well, look where I am, look how much I care. Stop it. It's not clever. It's not appropriate. Auschwitz is not a holiday resort. It is the scene of mankind's most greatest, worst, I should say, atrocity. Mm-hmm. You don't go there to take snaps. Stop doing it. It's not clever. It's not funny. Just stop it. So that's my nomination for this week, Swinney.
Yeah, I think there is a thing to. I'm not too sure. I'm a bit conflicted in this one because I think taking a picture as a remembrance perhaps might be okay. But the problem really, I think, was with Sturgeon's picture was it was basically done as a PR exercise.
Of course it was. Look at it. Yeah. Look at it.
I mean, I feel that's really wrong. Taking a photographer and making posing and using it as to make a political message that bolsters your own image, I think is really taking a liberty. It's not. I don't think that's acceptable. I think, like, obviously, kids taking selfies and people. There've been quite a lot of controversies about it. I think the Auschwitz Museum says basically don't take photos of this and don't take photos of it. It's really a grave or a shrine or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely right.
It's not a place.
Have some respect at least. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a place of remembrance. I think it's not a place for necessarily you to remember it with a selfie, and But yeah, I think it's Swinney's photo is not great, I would say, but I don't know. It's a bit.
Multi-Zoomer Awards. That's quite a good idea, Ian Sterling.
Well, I like it.
Quite a good idea. We do need to have a tracker on, see who gets the most Zoomer of the years.
Oh yes,
I'm pretty sure
so
betting Humsey straight away.
We've had a few examples there. We'll leave it today. Euan is going to decide.
Yes.
So I'm going to decide out of the total options, right?
Yes, you can decide which one it is.
See, to be honest, I think Niall gets it. I do.
I
watched that contribution. I know, I'm making friends here.
It has to be.
100%. You can't cutting doors and then watching the First Minister just attempt to deflect the bureaucratic and civil service language she was using to describe cutting a door, as you rightly said, Niall.
I know.
Increased ventilation, like all the. Just admit that's what your plan is. It's to cut a door. It's ridiculous. No one's going to fall for it. Get a grip.
So just put cat flaps. I mean, cat flaps put them in the doors is just as bonkers an idea, but it might work in similar fashion to what they're.
Well, and then you might at least get a cat in your classroom.
Well, that'd be handy for the rats to get in and out.
Must be equipped with 30 cats.
Right.
That's what
Okay.
I-
So as I think the idea was posted originally by Shirley Ann Somerville, but made much worse by Sturgeon trying to defend it. All right. Well, I think we are close to the end. We are running a little bit over today, not much. But I'd like to thank everyone for watching us today. I'd like to, first of all, thank David, Niall, and Euan for being our special guest. It was fun having you on, and good luck with your endeavours trying to get rats off the streets and of all kinds. Thank you all again to all the donors who so kindly funded the podcast, and I think we will see you
Again
here
next week,
Thursday, 7 p.m. on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And you can watch the show again on YouTube, and we'd really like you to subscribe there. We're getting more subscribers, and that helps us get more exposure. So have a good
Thanks
enjoy
for
the
all
rest
the comments, you beautiful people. And we'll see you again next week. And Euan, you are on top form. Thank you very much.
Sorry we couldn't read them all out, guys. Absolute quality interaction with you listeners and viewers tonight. Fantastic. Keep it up, please.
All right. So thanks you all, and we'll see you soon
next week.
Cheers, everyone.